Hey, everybody, it's Jeremy Rosenthal, your briefing attorney. We're opening up the vault to the past. Going to show an interview I did last year in Houston about Donald Trump's jury selection. I love this interview because we talk a lot about the ins and the outs and the details about jury selection, about what we're looking for as lawyers, about some of the other issues, about how juries are picked, how you're sort of left over. A lot of good stuff above and beyond the Trump trial itself. As an update to the story, Judge Merchan sentenced Donald Trump to what's called an unconditional discharge, which fundamentally means that the case is over and Donald Trump was convicted of a felony but not sentenced. Also, as a postscript as well, I believe Judge Merchan allowed Donald Trump to attend his son's graduation, which I think is addressed in the interview as well. At any rate, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks and have a great day.
950 Real Texas Real Talk. KPRC Houston, an iHeart radio station.
I'm very interested in the entire process here, and somebody who can take us kind of behind the scenes is a guy who's been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. Prosecutor first, then a defense attorney. He's the founder of TexasDefenseFirm.com, based out of Dallas-Fort Worth. That would be Jeremy Rosenthal. Jeremy, welcome back to AM 950 KPRC.
Thank you.
Let's talk about jury selection. In this particular case, we're talking about a defendant who is not really highly popular in New York City, at least not at this point in time. How difficult is it to find a fair and impartial jury when you've got somebody who's so well known and so, let's just call it, disliked in this particular venue?
This is the hardest jury to pick in American history. I mean, let's just be honest. You've got somebody who is really polarizing, and when we're picking a jury, even in Texas, even when we're not talking about a political case at all, we don't want to talk about presidential politics. We don't want to talk about religion. We don't even want to talk about how the Rangers beat the Astros in the playoffs last year, because we're going to hurt somebody's feelings and polarize them, right? So what we want to do is we want to take topics that are safe, that kind of diagnose that bias. But here, it's the nerve center, right? It's the very topic of this case. So it's absolutely a kryptonite issue normally, but here it's front and center. And to diagnose those biases and make sure that you don't have, if you're the prosecution, you don't want somebody to sneak on the panel just to acquit the guy, lie their way onto the jury. And Donald Trump doesn't want somebody who just doesn't like him to get on the jury, sneak their way on, and blow the whole thing up. He just doesn't want that. So it is an extraordinary challenge, really, for everybody involved.
You only get to have so many objections to certain jurors, right? The defense can only disqualify so many. Is that how that works?
That's correct. So there's the way that jury selection works is it's not like picking a kickball team. Okay, you're not chosen for your talents or your mental toughness or things like that, right? You are not chosen. You are left over. Meaning that you go through the process, and if nobody eliminates you or strikes you, then you serve on the panel. The judge can strike you if you can't follow the law. And to what you're referring to are called peremptory strikes. That means the defense has, in New York State for a case like this, has 10. The prosecution also has 10. The judge can expand that and give you more. Probably, I would think the judge would, just because, again, it's such an exceptional set of circumstances. But you get those people, and you can strike those people because they look at you funny, because you don't like what they do for a living, or you don't like anything about them. So that's what those are for. But you're right, those are limited. And in certain instances, it's not uncommon for a party to not have enough of those to strike all the people you want to strike.
Yeah. It seems to me that in a case like this, if ever there were a case for a change of venue, this would be it. So why is there no change of venue when you've got this situation where you would see the deck is stacked against the defense in this particular case?
I don't know why. I don't know if Mr. Trump's team moved to have it changed, the venue changed or not. In this instance, I mean, New York State's you've got to have it anywhere that you're going to put this trial. you have to have a really, really deep pool of jurors. Okay. The jury pool in this case is several thousand people, meaning that and in a typical case, in a typical felony case in Harris County, in Dallas County, in Collin County, where I am, you're looking at maybe 400 people for a capital type case, or just a really bad felony with kind of facts that sort of unnerve people. You're talking about maybe 100 potential jurors. So if you were going to transfer it somewhere else in New York State, you really can't transfer it somewhere where they don't have the capacity to have that many jurors, right? Maybe Buffalo would probably be okay, or some other venues, but I'm not aware whether or not his team moved to transfer the venue somewhere within New York State, obviously.
You would think they would, but you're right. I don't know for a fact that they did either. Let's talk a little bit about how you go about prosecuting and defending a case like this, because it's not exactly cut and dry. For one thing, I think there's shock that this is a felony case, and there's also shock that this guy is in trouble for basically writing a check, a non-disclosure agreement, and handing a check over. That is standard operating procedure in a lot of places. Why has this become a problem in your estimation in New York, other than the fact that clearly they have an axe to grind with this client?
Yeah, a lot. You'll be stunned to find out that a lot of criminal prosecutions originate because, well, we think you're a criminal and we think you're guilty, and now we're going to go find proof of that. That happens. So I can't, being a former prosecutor, you can't dismiss offhand things like that. You would hate to think that bias and prejudice from the prosecuting agencies is a factor, but it certainly is. You've watched that movie, Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio, very good costumes. Okay, good. There's a saying in there from, I think it's Christopher Walken, right? The dad. He says, why can't you beat the Yankees? Because you can't take the eyes off the stripes, right? If you remember, if I'm getting the line correct. But that's sort of what happens in a lot of prosecutions. If they're prosecuting a guy who is tatted from head to toe, they can't take their eyes off the tattoos a lot of times. And that doesn't mean the guy's guilty of what they're charging them with, right? They fixate on the fact that this person has a criminal record in certain instances, or they fixate on they just don't like the guy. And then they kind of go and they find things, and maybe there's a crime there and maybe there's not, but that can certainly be the impetus. I think legal professionals would tell you, of the 4 prosecutions that Donald Trump is facing, every lawyer I've talked to thinks that the one in New York State's the weakest. So from that standpoint, whether it's luck or whether it's just skill, this is the one that Donald Trump wants to fight first. I mean, I don't think he wants to fight any of them, but if you're going to fight one first, this is going to be the weakest one, and going to be the one that you have the best chance of. Putting this case together, it's a paper case, if you will. This is all money moving hands. It's all, so you're going to have transactions, you're going to have logs, you're going to be able to prove things without necessarily testimony. But the intent behind what you meant the money to do, that's got to come through witnesses. And if I'm Donald Trump and I'm his team, I'm trying to win this case by beating up on Michael Cohen, because he's the star witness here, right? And let's face it, that guy's, you gotta, there's a couple of ways you can cross-examine that guy, right? I mean, that guy's got some holes in his.
He's got a lot of credibility problems. Yeah, he's got a lot of credibility problems.
So if I'm the prosecution, I'm making it a paper case as much as I can. And if I'm defending it, I'm making it as human as I can. And I make it as human as I can, again, through Michael Cohen. He's going to be my bad guy in this case if I'm defending Trump.
I find in both the Trump cases we've seen so far, I find the judges' demeanor and behavior very, very interesting to me. They seem to be, for whatever reason, they seem to be highly sensitive to anything that Donald Trump has to say. They're all about giving him a gag order or telling him he has to be quiet or he can't talk about it. In this particular case that we're talking about, we have a judge who basically said, no, you have to be here every day. You can't leave. You can't go to your son's high school graduation. You can't go to the Supreme Court. You have to be here every day. I find that a bit unusual, don't you?
That's actually a good point. And I'll tell you this much. Okay, so again, this case being an extreme outlier from every other trial that's ever happened in the United States of America. Most of our laws are really fundamentally designed to protect the person accused. In Texas and in New York, you have to be present during a criminal prosecution, and that's to protect you. That's because we don't want to find you guilty. We don't want to. In our country, you got to be present to be convicted of a crime, to be jailed, right? We don't want to convict people in absentia. So the law is written. The law just wasn't written with Donald Trump in mind. Now, can the judge take a break for a day?
Why not recess for a day? Let the guy go to his son's high school graduation. Act like a human being with some compassion.
They can do that. Now that they can do. So from that standpoint, they can recess for things like that. They're taking one day off a week. I think it's Wednesdays. That's standard in a case that takes a couple months to try. Is that everybody gets a day off? It's not for the lawyers. You'll be happy to know that they're probably not on the golf course. They're probably digging out and answering a bunch of other angry client emails and questions about, well, what about my case now? And I think we've talked about it, before. Always pay your lawyer. Every time a lawyer gets paid, an angel gets their wings. These are facts, right? I mean, it's just the truth. But
I wouldn't want my attorney. I wouldn't want to be owing my attorney money. I don't think that's probably a way to build a good relationship with somebody who's trying to get you off the hook.
Right. And you want, let's be honest. You want your lawyer driving up in a nice car to the courthouse, don't you? I mean, you don't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want my lawyer to be rich. That means he's successful.
I want that too.
Yeah.
Yes, I want that too. Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, it's always fun to talk to you about all this stuff, Jeremy. Let's do this again a little bit further in the trial process and get your opinion on what's been going on up till that point. But right now, we still got to find a jury for this one. Jeremy Rosenthal joining us here on AM 950 KPRC. Thanks again, sir. Talk to you soon. Back with more in the moment. Jimmy Barrett Show.